This is the most famous sword in China. They call it the Sword of Goujian. It was one of 7 swords excavated in 1965 from a waterlogged tomb in Wangshan Village, Jiangling County, in the province of Hubei, which we call Tomb Number 1. But it alone was placed at the side of the deceased in his inner coffin, suggesting it had greater value than the other swords, which were placed outside the coffin. It currently resides in the Hubei Provincial Museum, Wuhan. Archaeologists found the sword tightly sheathed in a lacquered wooden scabbard, silk wrappings around the hilt. As the story goes, when they drew the sword from the scabbard and saw it was still in excellent condition, they tested it, easily cutting through a stack of 20 sheets of paper. Swords have become a significant part of Chinese lore, associated chiefly with the kingdoms of Yue and Wu, which existed in the southern part of China during the late spring and autumn period and the early warring states period in the first millennium BCE. These kingdoms were famous in their time for the fine quality of their blades, and after they were gone, their reputation grew in works of Chinese legend. According to one writing, those who had swords like these in their possession keep them hidden away in boxes, daring not to use them, for they are the treasure of all treasures. But I wanted to learn more about this sword in particular. Who is this Goujian that it is said to belong to? What was this sword doing in someone else's tomb? I had to find out. So I contacted an expert on ancient China, and on swords in particular, to ask some questions. I will share the conversation we had with you now, and stick around, because afterwards, I have some more tidbits to share about the sword you may not know. So I have with me here Dr. Olivia Milburn. She is a professor of Chinese language and literature at Seoul National University and is a person that knows a lot about ancient Chinese swords. So I thought she would be perfect for us to talk to today. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Milburn.
Thank you for inviting me.
Okay. So I guess the first question I should ask is about the provenance of the sword. How was it found? Where was it found? Who found it?
Yes, right. So the Sword of King Goujian was found in 1965. It comes from an archaeological excavation, which was actually the first modern scientific excavation to take place in Hubei province. And this was actually quite an unexpected find in Tomb Number 1, Wangshan, where it's quite a large distance away from the ancient kingdom of Yue. So it was a big surprise to find this royal sword in the Wangshan tomb.
Wow.
Yeah, a very interesting discovery.
And I take it there were other things that were alongside of it?
Yes, so in ancient China, you can actually tell social status quite precisely from tomb contents. So providing that the tomb has not been robbed, which of course will mess things up, the dimensions of the tomb, the design of the tomb will tell you a certain amount, but the amount of stuff that's in there correlates really precisely to status in life. So with hundreds of bronze objects, hundreds of lacquer objects, gold, silver, textiles I think were mostly gone, also some bamboo texts. Yeah, this was a very high status group of tombs.
So are you saying that someone did get into the tomb somewhere in between when it was created and in modern times?
Tomb Number 1, no, but it was this was found as part of a complex of other tombs, and the major tomb present was actually extremely badly robbed multiple times from antiquity to 1967, which is when that grave was excavated.
I see.
And that was also kind of important because the main tomb in this complex has a name attached to it. So we know that this was a very high status Chu dynasty government official,
Ah.
Zhao Yu, who was buried in the main tomb, and then the rest stood around.
So that kind of leads into what I was going to ask you next, and that is determining the time that of the tomb, right? How old it is.
Yes.
And our ability to identify the owner and particularly the owner of the sword.
Yes. Yeah, so this is actually something that there's been a lot of work on. When the Wangshan tomb complex was excavated, and that was 1965 to 1967, there were quite a number of tombs excavated. This is a cemetery. So these are early warring, mid-warring state era tombs. So around 330 BC.
So this is before the first emperor.
This is before the first emperor. And so warring states era is 475 to 221 BC. So it's actually quite a complicated issue here, because the current assumption that everybody's working with when they look at this tomb complex is that there are basically two choices for occupant of tomb number 1 at Wangshan. Either it's got to be a prince of Yue who left the country and went to and took with him a treasure sword belonging to an ancestor, King Goujian of Yue, and certainly one option. A royal prince leaving, taking it with him. He then is buried in tomb number 1 at Wangshan, and that's perfectly feasible. The other major option is that this is spoils of war. Chu eventually conquered Yue. This was a complex process. We don't know very much about it. The date that is traditionally given for this is around 330 BC, but we have Yue artifacts saying they still have a king that are much closer in time to us. So apparently the state did survive this supposed conquest, and that makes it difficult to know what exactly is going on here. But it is possible that the sword ends up in a tomb as war booty.
So it's interesting. I didn't realize that was a that was a possibility. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the sword originally belonged to the tomb owner. The tomb owner could have stolen it.
The tomb owner could well have stolen it, or it's an antique. It would all. I mean, King Goujian, his date. He reigned from 496 to 473 BC, so it's going into the tomb as an antique.
I see.
No doubt about that.
I see.
The question is who owns it when it is buried as an antique.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the sword itself.
Yes.
What is it made of? How is it made? Who made it?
Right. Yeah. So Yue swords are fabulous things. They are very, very remarkably high quality weapons. And when you look at the quality of Yue swords, you get a bit of argument, but as to whether these are the best swords ever made, or whether you want one of the Japanese samurai swords from the great masters in like.
So you mean the greatest ever made in the world, perhaps?
Greatest ever made in the world.
Wow.
These are really, really as good as it gets. When it comes to swords, this is what you want.
I heard
This
that it's
is
still very
really great
sharp.
quality.
Yeah, is the sword still sharp? Because I heard some talk on the internet about it still being sharp.
Oh yes. Oh yeah. These are Yue swords come out of the ground as sharp as the day that they were made. They are sharper than any modern razor.
Wow. And
So
what materials were used to make it?
varies enormously. They are actually quite complicated things. So normally you'll have a high copper bronze core. That's for the flexibility so that you can bend the sword a bit and it won't shatter. They have some with iron blades and some with high tin bronze blades. And then you have some that have the edge of the sword sharpened and then they chrome plate it so that it will be completely rusted.
And the one that we call the Sword of Goujian, is this one made the same way?
This is that one does not have the chrome plated edge. Chrome plated edges are relatively unusual, but this is yeah, still a really, really top quality sword, double edged.
And I understand. Oh, go ahead.
Yes, and it says on it,
Oh, that's what I was going to ask about. There's an
Goujian,
inscription, right? Yeah.
yes, Yue Goujian, King Goujian of Yue made this for his own personal use. Made this sword for his own personal use, or had this made for his own personal use. And that again is an issue that is currently unresolved. When these things say made for own personal use, does that mean like the king was there, like supervising or participating in the making of his sword, or he just writes the check?
I see. So in other words, is it
We don't know.
customized? Is it customized for him,
It's
or did someone
customized
make it
for
for him and then he
him.
just put his name on it?
You will have to. You can't put your name on this later. It has to be done. But potentially the king is right there watching this being made and participating in the manufacture somewhere. That's not actually unheard of in China. There are some cultures that really emphasize metalworking skills.
Ah. So would this sword have been for actual fighting or just for ceremonial purposes? Do we know what purpose it served?
This would be for actual fighting.
Oh.
Yeah. The kings of Yue were war leaders. They fight personally in battle, and the king would have used this himself.
Wow.
And Yue, one of the characteristics of their style of fighting is killing distance. So northern China, they use much more long distance weapons. So you see arrows and crossbows and spears and halberds. You're killing somebody quite a distance away. US weapons are all close range.
Oh.
And kings did put themselves in real risk using these weapons because you're killing people really close up. You know, it's daggers, it's short swords, and sometimes that goes wrong, right? I mean,
Yeah.
some of the Yue kings die in battle because they are that close to the action.
Is it because they thought it was more honorable to be able to be close to your enemy, or just a
Quite
cultural thing?
possibly, yes. And the other thing is these people do fighting on boats. So a lot of it is hand-to-hand action on war boats.
Oh.
And that gets really nasty.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So this particular sword then probably has killed a few people.
I'm sure. Yeah.
So we've been talking about Gojen and the state of Yue, and I just want to for people who don't know much about this time period, can you tell us just a little bit of background about him and also about the state of Yue?
Yes. So this is basically about the size and shape of modern day Zhejiang province. So East China, coastal area, dominating Yangtze Delta region and Chentang River Delta region. So King Goden himself is a really, really interesting and pretty sinister
Oh,
figure in Chinese history. So he came to the throne after his father died of natural causes. And then immediately, King Goden of Yue got into a war with the neighboring kingdom of Wu, so to the north. So in battle, one of the Yue army officers killed the king of Wu.
ah,
So that is a major disaster for both kingdoms. A new monarch comes to the throne in Wu and is determined on revenge. And then there's an enormous battle in which King Baoden of Yue ended up being forced to surrender.
oh,
He went as a prisoner of war for some years to his enemy state in the north, and then proceeded to persuade the king of Wu of his abject surrender and total loyalty, so that King of Wu agreed to let him go.
was he
And
lying?
yeah,
Okay.
yes. Um, and he spent 23 years rebuilding his kingdom and came back and killed everyone.
Oh, he cut out again. He went back and what?
He went back and killed everybody.
Wow. So,
Yeah, yeah. So King Baoden of Yue, he's a sinister man. This is somebody with great acting ability. You know, he can persuade the enemy king who has him prisoner that he's now this loyal, obedient guy, and it's all about revenge.
wow. So if they ever made a movie, he'd kind of be the villain, perhaps, huh?
He's kind of villainous. On the other hand, he's also a great symbol of patriotism in China right up to the present day.
Oh, okay.
You know, the person who spends decades lying and pretending to build up strength so that you can restore
Yeah.
your country.
Yeah, I can see how that. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it. It was a successful strategy.
It was a successful strategy. And so, for example, during Second World War, during the Japanese occupation of some parts of China, there's a lot of discussion about King Baoden and, you know, surface acceptance and surface obedience in order to build up your strength so that you can fight back.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. You know, for an occupied country, that's a really inspirational message.
Yes, I can see that too.
Yeah.
Now, the sword, I heard that it is not allowed to leave China. Is that true?
Yes, after, it is one of a group of objects that you have to visit China if you're going to see, because um, it's not unusual. Many countries have this kind of legislation, but they do not wish to have national treasures wandering about the place and risking getting damaged. And in this case, the Sword of King Baoden, even though it was excavated in absolutely pristine condition, was damaged when it was displayed in Singapore in 1994.
And so they're like, if you can't take care of our our swords, then
If
you
you
can't
can't
have
take
them.
care of our stuff, you are not going to get hold of it. And yeah, the damage to the sword that did prompt a re-evaluation of whether it was safe to send metal objects overseas. The previous assumption was that that was fine and they were not going to be damaged. And then you get the sword back cracked.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine what they did to it.
But so yeah, I mean, I suppose it was an accident, but still.
It was an accident, of course, yes,
Yeah.
but it's still really undesirable. And when you think about, yeah, I mean, in China itself, damaging a national treasure is a really, really bad
Yeah.
thing, and you get punished quite severely. And yeah, if you steal and damage a national treasure, that's probably death penalty.
How would you rate this sword on a scale of national treasures? Is it up near the top, or is it
Oh,
uh,
it is really up near the top, because the inscription tells you that this is an item that you can link with a really, really super important guy in Chinese history, in East Asian history. Yeah, that's unusual. But yes, this is very remarkable. There are a few other Yue royal swords with inscriptions, but King Goujian is the important one. You know, he is the great king of Yue that people later on, you know, they claim to be descended from him. He's the one that you want to go and visit the tomb of, and you know, all of this.
yeah. The state of Yue wasn't around for very long, is that right?
No, it's quite short-lived. So the early history of Yue is really obscure. King Goujian then becomes this super famous great monarch, and then his descendants use the whole thing pretty quickly. But then on the other hand, Yue itself, that has a really, really major cultural legacy. There were lots of states that claim to be descended from Yue, including Vietnam,
Interesting.
Yue,
Mm,
Yunnan. You know, it's the southern Yue.
yeah.
Yeah,
So as for the sword itself, how would it, because you know a lot about other swords, how does
yeah.
this one compare with other ones of the period? Because there are quite a few that have been found, is that right?
Oh yes, and this is a really, really high quality piece. This is a really remarkable piece, but there is an awful lot that we do not know about metalworking technology. Part of the reason that it's been so difficult to learn about metalworking traditions and techniques is that it's been really difficult to find the relevant archaeological sites, because in North China, metalworking is concentrated by law in certain areas. You have government-controlled workshops, and they're huge. And the one at Homa, you know, they make high-quality bronzes for a vast number of different countries for many, many, many centuries.
Mm,
And we know Yue didn't work like that. They have small workshops under named masters. And finding one of those workshops is not easy, right? And nobody has so far. They found some of the mines and whatever, but finding the workshop site is so far not happening.
do we
And
even do we know the names? Do we know the
yeah,
names of any of the masters?
oh yeah, so in the Kingdom of Wu, they had the great Ganjiang, and his wife Mo Ye, who were sword makers. And in Yue, the really famous sword master was Ye.
Could he be the maker of this sword?
It's a little bit late for him, but possibly it could be an Oyetsu sword, yes. We don't have date of birth and death for these people, and Oyetsu certainly did make swords for King Goujian early on in his reign.
Wow. This is very exciting. I appreciate you telling us all you can about the sword, and about this time period. It's very fascinating. I every time I'm looking through archaeological news, there always seems to be something new coming out of China, and it's kind of exciting.
Well, yes. I mean, in China since about 1949, they've been averaging one major Tutankhamun's tomb level discovery a week. I mean, it's just impossible to keep up with. They find so many truly amazing things, and ongoing. Yeah. Even if you just kind of like narrow it down and concentrate on one particular time frame, the stuff really comes over the plate fast.
Yeah. So it's exciting too, because the histories will just keep getting updated because of new information. So
yeah. Well, I mean, it would be really, really nice if they did at some stage come across one of these workshops, because we know that the Yue are the first people in the world to move on to make steel. They move straight from Bronze Age to Iron Age to steel, and we don't know how they did it.
within what span of years are we talking here?
We're talking about 200 years.
Within 200 years. Wow, that's
yeah.
fast.
So they have access to steel like about 2,000 years before anybody else. Yeah.
Fabulous.
It really is.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today and share this information. Love learning about ancient China and about these really fabulous artifacts. So thank you, Dr. Milburn.
Thank you.
Wu and Yue bimetallic bronze swords, such as this one, would use different compositions of bronze alloy for different parts of the sword. The body of the blade would have low tin content, 88% copper, 10% tin, making it more flexible and less likely to shatter. The cutting edges would have a higher tin content, 78% copper, 20% tin, making them harder and sharper. The swords were cast in a multi-step process. First, they used 2 clay molds to cast the blade. Inscriptions were typically cast into the blade at this time. Then they used a second set of molds to cast the cutting edge, which shrank to hug the blade as it solidified. Finally, a third mold was used, casting the guard, grip, and pommel. On some of the swords, a tin-rich paste was added to create the pattern that would protect the piece against corrosion. I will conclude this video by relating an interesting legend found in the Yue Shu, which recounts King Goujian of Yue meeting Confucius. Now keep in mind, this story comes from centuries after Goujian, so its historical reliability is questionable. But I share it with you because it illustrates the symbolic qualities of Chinese weaponry. It reads, Goujian personally invited wise men and sages to come to his court. Confucius, followed by 70 disciples, had an elegant zither that belonged to the kings of old. To ratify the rituals, he went to offer his advice. Goujian put on the armor of Qi Yi, buckled on the sword Buguang, and grasped the lance Wulu. He sent out 300 death-defying warriors to line up in battle formation below the pass. Confucius then arrived in Wei in state. The king of Yue said, Good, good, what are you going to teach me? Confucius replied, I can explain the way of the 5 emperors and the 3 kings. Therefore I have brought my fine zither and come to your majesty's home. Goujian sighed deeply and said, "The people of Yue are by nature weak and stupid. They live on dry land but travel by water. Boats are their chariots, and oars are their horses. When they travel, it is as if they are drifting on the wind. Once they set off, they are hard to stop. Besides which, it is in the nature of the Yue people to keep their weapons ready, and they have no fear of death. If you would change this, it is not possible." At this, Confucius bid farewell, and none of his disciples were able to stop him. Thank you for joining me today. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you really liked it, a super thanks to help support the channel. You might like my little e-booklet, Why Ancient History Matters. It's designed to persuade people that the subject is important, even in the modern world. You might also wish to use it to help spread the word, so feel free to share it with someone you know. It's free for anyone who wants it. I've left a link in the description box below the video for you to grab a copy. Catch you later.